So on this week's episode of Be More Super, the podcast, we've got a great guest. This guest has not only been in my personal favourite film, Memphis Belle, but he's also been in 24, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Designated Survivor, and The Purge, and many, many other things. I could spend the whole interview, reading off his resume. It's Reed Diamond. Reed, welcome to the show, sir.
Oh, Brian, man, I'm super psyched to be here. This is awesome.
And thank you so much for giving me your time.
Oh my God, it's my pleasure. And we were just bonding before we started. We were reminiscing about Skegness and the Lincolnshire coast.
Skegness. I tell you what, there was no social distancing whatsoever on the Saturday I was there. And it got me quite nervous because, unfortunately, even though we're easing out of lockdown here in the UK, the infection rates are going back up slowly but surely. So,
right.
But I'm fully vaccinated. I'm keeping safe, trying to avoid people. How's everything where you are? Because are you on the west coast? Is it?
I am now. I live in Toronto, but I'm here. I'm in Portland, Oregon right now, working on a new show. So the family and I just jumped into the old Chevy Tahoe and drove across a week ago. Saw a little bit of, saw some beautiful places in America and places my daughter hadn't been. I mean, I drive across. My wife and I have driven across the States many, many times, and this is the first time. In fact, my dog had one more trip on my daughter because my dog and I drove from LA to Toronto like 2 years ago. But this time we had the whole family in the car, and it was great. We went to Deadwood in South Dakota in the Black Hills, and that was spectacular. And the Badlands, which I love, and we're in Montana, where part of my family's from. So we're here in Portland, Oregon, and I'm out here on the very sexy Lido deck, the second floor deck of my hotel, because my daughter's in school upstairs and my wife's working online as well. But we're doing great. But it's funny, you said Memphis Belle is your favorite, or one of your favorite things that I did. We shot that. We did all the exteriors in Lincoln.
Yeah.
At the art. You probably know that, right? You probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I spent 4 weeks in Lincoln. When we were shooting Memphis Belle, and I love it. And anytime I get the chance to go, it's such a beautiful town with the cathedral and the old Roman walls, and I had a good time. And then in Skegness, I've been to Skegness and the coast many times. The last time I was in Skegness, I remember having about 8 pints at some local establishment, and which seemed like a good idea at the time, but probably was ill-advised.
Yeah, a local watering hole in Skegness. Do you know what? I haven't been out in Skegness drinking since I was probably 19 or 20 years old, and I'm 42 now. So that's what parenthood does to you. You're more about the 2p machines and the arcades for the kids. But while we're on the subject of Memphis Belle, because 31 years ago, I think it would have been 32 when you actually filmed it.
32, yeah.
And it's an awesome movie. And that was, correct me if I'm wrong, your first sort of movie job that you had back then. I mean, how daunting was it to be on a film with such a great cast and such a great subject as well?
Yeah, I mean, it was an incredible film to have as your first film, right? On a subject matter I was really passionate about. I'd always been fascinated with B-17 bombers, and then get to work with my heroes, actors that I was just idolizing at the time. Eric Stoltz and Matthew Modine, D.B. Sweeney. I mean, everybody. And it's a funny thing because for that to be your first movie, it was downhill for a while after that. Because I'm 21 years old. I'm in England for 4 months, making a movie at my favorite studio, the studio I'd always dreamed of working at, Pinewood, in outside of London, and working on a movie that I felt passionately about. And we got to go to boot camp. We bonded. We were over down in Dartmoor at an old manor house, Fulford Manor. And the Lord there, his family had been on the wrong side, I think, of the Civil War all those years ago. He must have been, I guess he was a round top, or I can't remember what he was, which side, but it was an amazing place, and to get to do boot camp with all these guys. It was funny. My 2 best friends from that movie are Tate Donovan and Eric Stoltz, and I think we first bonded because the 3 of us had to share a one-man tent one night out on maneuvers, and it just made us closer. But and it's funny, we just dug up some pictures from the RAF base out in Lincoln where we shot, because we didn't have dressing rooms. It was the director, Michael Caton Jones. First he sent us to boot camp because he really wanted us to bond and get that feeling of what it was like. And I remember, most productions, the actors have some sort of input about their wardrobe and things like that, and he didn't want any of that. So you got handed your costume, and you got no changes. It was just as if you were an enlisted man or someone, in the Second World War. And then when we got to the RAF base in Lincoln, there were no dressing rooms. We all just found whatever empty room in whatever that concrete building was, and we set up shop. So Eric and Tate and I put together a little room. I remember we were highly evolved. It's the page 3 girls from the old circular. So we decorated with the sun paper. So we decorated the room with page 3 girls, and had some beer in there, and then just and started the movie. But I mean, it was an amazing movie as my first gig. Sorry, of course my email's pinging. And I fell madly in love with those guys, and I made friends for life. And it's an interesting movie too, especially for a modern audience. I feel really lucky. There was pre-CGI, right? So we actually had real B-17 bombers, and then we built one. We had some Air Force and RAF guys, engineers, who came in and built one to scale in the studio at Pinewood as well, because the director Michael Caton Jones wanted to have that feeling of what it was really like. I think in that Das Boot kind of way. I'm sure he was inspired by that. Because prior to that, if you saw a bomber movie or even a fighter pilot movie, the camera was very far away, and it looked like the cockpit was just this endless expanse, right? And he wanted to get the camera in there, and so you feel, because you're just, when you're in a B-17 bomber, you're just a protector of bombs, right? It's just, you're 10 guys up there just trying to protect the bombs. But the shell of that thing, it's incredibly thin. But anyway, talking about pre-CGI, so we had real B-17 bombers, and I was so lucky. I got to go up while they were filming the aerial sequences. So instead of making the aerial sequences on a computer, we're flying up. We're somewhere over the beautiful patchwork fields of East Anglia, and they've got real German Messerschmitts coming in and shooting at us, and I'm on the top turret gun firing blanks up at them, and so you get the feeling of the sound and the cold and that experience. And so we were very lucky, even in the technology, because it was still old Hollywood. So they also built, I can't remember the dimensions, they're probably like 1/8 scale models of B-17s that could fly. So they would have them fly, take off and land at that at the RAF base in Lincolnshire, and then we got 5 of the existing B-17s, and we destroyed one accidentally while we were filming there. So be careful if you lend your B-17 to a movie crew. But I feel really lucky. I finally just showed the movie to my daughter because it's such a sweet movie. It was a movie. It's interesting because in 1989 there wasn't the hunger for the World War II story. So we all thought we were going to be going to the Academy Awards and walking down the red carpet for that movie because we had such a profound personal experience making it. But then it did fine, but it didn't blow the world away. And then 6 or 7 years later, the Band of Brothers stuff came out, and that sort of reignited that love affair with the Greatest Generation. And it's still, we, like I say, we're all still really, really close, and we do you just said 32 years, and we do every year. Can you believe it was 20 years? Can you believe it was 27 years since we made it? 32 years. And we're still amazing friends. We still actually, in fact, all call each other by our character names from that movie to this day.
Awesome.
So like if Eric Stoltz is calling me, he's like, Hoog, because I was Hoogestiger, right? And he's like, Hoogaburger, Hoogameister. So we call him Danny, and we still, Eric and I saw Matthew at a premiere of a movie that Eric had directed that I was in, and we still call him Cap. So it was a great first film, and I still I think about it all the time, and what a magical experience as a young actor, a young man, to be in England and be there on my own at 21 for 4 months. So Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's one of the most special ones.
I had DB Sweeney on the show a little while back, and he was actually
Oh, okay.
saying that how awesome it was to fly in the bomber, because apparently you had to have a certain amount of people in the bomber for it to fly or something like that, and that was the reason why everyone got in there and flew in it. But I mean, obviously, it being your first like movie, did you learn a lot?
Right.
What did you learn from actually working on that project going, for the future?
Do you mean like what I learned as an actor, or what I
Yeah,
learned
yeah.
just about? Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I was in the middle. I've been acting professionally, or I guess since I was about 17. I've always done, started in the theater in New York, and at the time, when I was making the movie, I was in the middle of my drama school studies at Juilliard in New York City, and so I'd done. I mean, I felt pretty confident as an actor, but I think what was luxurious about that experience, which got rarer and rarer as budgets got tighter and tighter, is I believe I had about. I got cast in that maybe 2 months before I had to be there, so I had 2 months to prepare, which was so spectacular. So I learned everything there was to learn about. I learned about the Second World War, about that period, and I'm listening to the music. I even taught myself to smoke because I wasn't a smoker. So I literally had like that was a harebrained 21-year-old idea, because I literally I'm gonna start with one cigarette a day, and I had like Camel filterless, right? Because I figured that's what they would smoke. So I do one a day for the first week, and the second week I'd have two a day, and and I built up until I could smoke a bunch of cigarettes. And then when I got there, I realized, my character, he's the guy who's not gonna smoke, right? He's not gonna drink, he's not gonna smoke. But by then I was addicted to cigarettes, so that took a little while to kick. So that was maybe I learned some negative things. So I'll tell you what I learned. I learned, don't teach yourself to smoke. Don't play poker with DB Sweeney with your per diem, because you'll lose your money. And and I learned about taxes. I learned about what you make is not actually what you bring home. So take that into account. But no, it was really magical. It was a magical experience. Working with just people, such great actors, and also just great guys, right? And we really, it was a beautiful ensemble experience, which is it's not very rare, but where you get 10 guys where we're all just playing well together and really sort of just in love with each other. And but it was funny because I was really nervous. You ask about like working with all those actors. I was so nervous the first week because I'm working with my heroes, so I barely spoke. Because we go around the first week we're in London, we're going to our fittings, we're having rehearsals and meetings and blah, 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 blah. And I was absolutely mute. So no one, because I thought, well, all these guys, I'm going to learn from them, I'm just going to observe. And then, after boot camp and we were all comfortable, then they couldn't shut me up. And then that was because I had to spend maybe a month of the shooting where it's just my legs behind Tate and Matthew's head, because I'm the top turret. So they're the pilot and the co-pilot, and we had the real comms, the real Second World War comms, and that's how they did our dialogue, but that's how we could hear each other. So I'm just doing bits. I'm just improvising comic bits throughout the entire day to crack them up in between scenes, and sometimes even during scenes, because no one could see my face. So I was, like I said, mute for the first week, and then 3.5 months of me never shutting up. But yeah, but I guess the hard lesson, maybe, which I alluded to earlier, the hardest thing to learn was it wasn't all going to be like this. Because I remember my next project I did after that was a TV movie, and it wasn't that same. I was trying to sort of generate that kind of experience, that kind of camaraderie, that kind of excitement, and it just wasn't there. The script wasn't as good. You're dealing with different personalities, and I think that's been as an actor, I think, that perhaps not, I think that may be one of the hardest lessons to learn, is that there's going to be these great experiences, these life-changing experiences, and then there's just going to be working and paying the rent. And I always call it, I classify jobs in two ways. I say there's the jobs where I go, there's one where I go, I hope I'm good enough. And then there's two where I hope I can make this good. And, so the ones that are really life-changing, the ones where like, oh, this is an amazing script. I'm working with these amazing people. I hope I'm gonna be good enough. And then there's ones where you're like, okay, this is network television, and it's pretty rough on the page. I hope I can, make this good. I hope I can polish this turd as shiny as it can get. I mean, I've been very lucky in the last, I've had a lot of amazing experiences, and certainly in the last few years, especially with the explosion of cable television and all the streaming platforms, there's just so much good work out there, and there's so many good projects. So I've been very blessed, especially in the last few years, of everything I'm doing. I'm hoping I'm good enough for it, and which is nice.
You have done plenty. You have been a busy boy. You really have.
Yeah.
When we talk about your training, Juilliard, which I know very well from Christopher Reeve went there, Robin Williams went there, as well as many other top stellar people in the industry. What was the training like? Because over in the UK you've got LAMDA, you've got RADA, the London thingy of speech, I think it's called, or something like that. What was Juilliard like? Did you enjoy it, and did you take much from it?
These are excellent questions, Brian. And so when I was at Juilliard, it was really built on that British model that you're referring to. So it was very similar to RADA or LAMDA at the time. And I think those schools have evolved as well. But the head of the program when I was there was a Brit who in fact he got captured at Dunkirk, right? So he spent the entire war pretty much in a German POW camp, and they had a complete works of Shakespeare, and he just started directing plays there. And so that was sort of his entree into the dramaturgical world, which is a great story. But he was a cruel man. I remember you always remember the worst things that were said to you as an actor, your worst reviews and the directions that were harshest. And I remember my last year at Juilliard, we're doing Romeo and Juliet, and I'm playing Mercutio, and he goes, "I want champagne, but you're giving me stale beer." And so that was about the size of it. But when I was there, yeah, it was
straight to the point.
But straight to the point. That was the other thing too. Like, that was back in, there was no such thing as positive reinforcement. Because I'm from that last generation, I think, where almost everything, whether it be sports or art, everything was negative reinforcement. No one ever said good job. Everyone's like, you're fucking up, or that's terrible, do better, things like that. So it was a strange place, because I'd already been working as an actor, doing commercials, so I was earning my living as an actor prior to going to Juilliard, and I'd had a lot of experience in the doing plays. But I remember my first few years there were pretty great, and there was one teacher who had studied with Strasberg and Meisner, and he was an old actor studio guy, and there were a few teachers who were bringing in what America had offered to acting and acting training, but they were few and far between. The school really had a very antiquated view of what an actor was. So it was really more movement and speech and breaking down a text. And it was interesting because I even got lambasted because on my application they said, "Who are your favorite actors?" And at the time, my favorite actor was Martin Sheen. His performance in Apocalypse Now was one of those performances where I go, that's what makes me want to be an actor. But I think some wisdom in my head said, write one more down. I wrote down Laurence Olivier. And and at the time when I was at the school, most of the teachers, Laurence Olivier and Gielgud, were still sort of the paragons. And this is 1987. This isn't 1942. And I remember saying, well, I think a lot's happened since then. And certainly, with what happened with American film actors and stage actors with Brando and Montgomery Clift and Geraldine Page and Joanne Woodward, all those people who'd come and really sort of upended, what we were doing. But it was so to answer I know I've gone long-winded on it. When we were there, the program when I was there was more like basic training in the military. The idea was they were going to break you all down, but they often and they did break everyone down, but they've failed to put everyone back together again. And right. And the program now, I hear, is people I've met who've gone in the last 20 years, because there's so many great actors out there who've gone there. It became, right after I left, it became a much more American-centric program with American playwrights, and I think it has lived up to its being sort of a premier American educational institute for acting, a great conservatory school. But I got a lot out of it. I got everything I wanted out of it, because the reason I went there initially is I was, like I said, I was already knew I was going to be an actor. I was earning my living as an actor, but I'd been so serious as an actor every summer. I hadn't really had any fun. I was always doing the plays at school. In the summer, I'd go do summer stock. I was very focused throughout all of high school. So when I was graduating high school, I thought, well, I really want to go to regular college. And this is the most embarrassing admission of one of my most embarrassing admissions. The movie Animal House. Are you familiar with the movie Animal House?
Yeah.
About American fraternity in the 60s. So I was like, that seems like fun, because I'd grown up in New York City in this very specific environment. And I go, I want to do that. So I went to college, and I went to a beautiful university, University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, but it was sort of the picturesque university, and it had fraternities. I go, I'm going to be a drama major there, but I went there to drink beer and, meet girls. And I remember being in one of my drama classes, and I remember someone, the teacher praising me, and I'm going, oh, I don't deserve this praise. I really haven't put the effort into it. I need to get serious about my craft, because I want to be able to play Lear when I'm 70, and I want to know how to handle Chekhov and all those things. So there was an article that week, serendipitously, there was an article in the New York Times Sunday magazine about Yale and Juilliard, the two at the time, considered the premier acting conservatory programs in the U.S. And I read it, and Yale you had to have finished your first 4 years of college. It was a master's program. I was like, well, I'm only in my second year of college, and Juilliard, you could come at any age. So I was like, I'll apply to Juilliard. I didn't know that people I didn't know it was hard to get into or anything like that. I was like, I'm going to go there. And long story short, I got my audition, and because they were like, oh, I'd missed the deadline to apply, and there was this brand new thing called FedEx. And I was like, I've heard of this thing called FedEx. If I FedEx you this application, it'll be there tomorrow. Maybe I could get an audition. And I got my audition, and I only because I didn't know that it was hard to get into. I wasn't nervous, and I got in there. But I did, long story short, I did get out of it what I wanted to get out of it. In that I'm not intimidated by Shakespeare or Chekhov, and I have a passion for them, and I did learn a lot of things. It's interesting. It's only in sort of this latter part, like I'm about to die. But the last 10 years, this chapter of my career, I've used it more than ever. I've used it. Interestingly enough, I feel like the Whedon family, Joss and Jed and Marissa, I feel like they're responsible for making me use my Juilliard education, because I remember saying to my wife, this is probably, it's about 10 years ago. I said, I don't know why the hell I went to, I didn't use that word, but I was like, I went to Juilliard. I'm never going to do Shakespeare again. What was I thinking? And then cut to like a week later, Joss emails me. He goes, hey, I'm going to be doing a movie of Much Ado About Nothing. Would you like to be in it? And it's like, yes, of course, I'd love to be in it. So I get to do an incredible Shakespeare movie with people I loved. And then when Jed and Marissa, cast me in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I had to, building my first supervillain, or minor supervillain, I had to use all of those Juilliard things that I had been taught. I had to figure out, well, how will he stand? How will he use his voice? And And so I had to I created sort of like a little Juilliard supervillain training camp where because I can't use any of those things that I'm using on Homicide, those natural things. I have to find who this guy is. And so I was able to sort of fall back or, remember the things that I've been taught, and they've come in handy. In fact, the show I'm doing right now, I've been thinking about some of those things that I was taught by, like how does this person move through space, and how do they carry themselves, and how would they speak, and I also have some my character speaks in a vernacular that's a little heightened, and so I'm not intimidated by that kind of language. So so I got some things out of Juilliard, and I graduated in 1991. So it's
just a few years ago.
That's terrifying. That's a few years ago. But yeah, it's come in handy. So in retrospect, I now, I used to sort of impugn it, and now I really recognize that it was a great experience. I made lifelong friends, and I learned things. But I think that's probably not dissimilar to everybody about how you look back on things. You go, oh, I could have traveled down that road, or I should have. But you can only learn something when you learn it, and then you start to go, oh, I did get something out of that, or that experience, whether it seemed negative or positive at the time, was actually, it made me who I am today. And I'm glad I built that piece of armor, or I got that lesson.
I mean, in your early years, do you feel that graduating from Juilliard helped you get parts, because it's quite a well-respected, school? Do you think the school that you went to helps, or is it just solely down to the audition?
That's a great question. It has a cachet, and it had a cachet back then. But the other end of that sword, as I talked to you earlier, I said that they broke people down and they didn't really put them back together again. And tying in all into Memphis Belle, I got Memphis Belle in the middle of my journey through Juilliard at the summer after my second year, and it's a 4-year program. And normally they didn't let actors come back. If you left to go off and do a job, you'd have to start over again at the beginning. Because I was going to miss maybe 2 months of my third year, and the shooting schedule. And they said, no, you can come back. And I did come back after I finished Memphis Belle. I finished shooting. I left on a Sunday night from London, and Monday morning I was in my first rehearsal I was right back at school Monday morning the next day. And I should have taken 2 weeks vacation somewhere warm, maybe Skegness, well, and I should, because I was fried. I'd had one of the biggest experiences of my life, but I threw myself back in. And then I was and this isn't the program, this just speaks to like whatever sense of myself I had. At the time, I thought, oh, I don't want anyone in my class to think I've gone Hollywood or I've changed. So I'm really going to throw myself into this program, and I think I'm going to become a great Shakespearean actor, which was not really necessarily my journey. It wasn't really what I'd brought to my work the first 2 years. So I lost a sense of myself. And so when I left Juilliard, I worked a lot, but my confidence was very low. And it's interesting. I mean, and it's something, as now I talk to younger actors and I think about teaching, and that one of the hardest journey as an actor is the personal work, the emotional, the internal work. Doing the part, that's one set of skills. But how you navigate this life and how you deal with adversity and confidence, and I always tell this story, and it was life-changing for me. So when I was doing Homicide: Life on the Street, the great actor Charles Durning guest starred, and I'm sure you're familiar with Charles Durning. He Dog Day Afternoon. He's won Emmys and Academy Awards, and just one of the greatest actors of all time. Not only a great actor, I mean, an amazing actor, but an amazing human. Like, this guy landed at D-Day, and between D-Day and the end of the Second World War, he was machine gunned, had his throat slit, and got bayoneted, and kept getting thrown back into the action. So this guy's he's a force, right? This is a man to be reckoned with, right? And we're we're doing this scene, and he has this long speech. We're sitting in a bar, and I have a front row seat. I'm the nearest actor to him while he delivers this speech, and he delivers it the first time, and it's amazing. He's so good. And he delivers it a second time, even better. Third time, fantastic. And after the third time, he goes, "That one was good." And I go, "Mr. Durning, they were all amazing." And he goes, "Yeah, but that was the first time I wasn't worried if you guys liked me and thought if I was any good." And I said to him, I go, "So it never goes away, does it?" And he goes, "It never goes away." And that was a really important lesson, because this guy is one of the greatest actors of all time. Everything he does is magical, but he still feels those nerves, that worry that we're going to think he's good, we're going to like him. And that was really an important moment for me, because I think there's something in your mind where you go, I shouldn't be nervous, or I should. You think there's a way you need to feel, and that isn't necessarily true, and you have to manage that as you go along. I mean, already for this job, I know, the night before I'll probably have some trouble sleeping, because I'll be excited and anxious and looking forward to it, but also you never know what to expect. So but this was going back. So it took me a while to get my confidence back. I don't really think I got it back until Homicide, which was just another amazing training camp. Because I think until Homicide, I truly regarded myself as more of a theater actor than an on-camera actor. And I'd done a bunch of stuff on camera, but I still wasn't quite as at home as I felt on stage. And Homicide was this amazing crucible to sort of, make your steel harder, right? And, just your forge. And because it was relentless, and the camera was everywhere, you were never off camera because it was all handheld, and you're working with these just powerhouse actors with these amazing scripts and incredible directors. So I felt like that was the place where I got a lot more confidence. But then, and it's funny, we were talking about you were asking, my friend said, why is there nothing about the red shirt freshman on the blurb for this thing? So the red shirt freshman was a long-standing comedy improv group I was a part of in Los Angeles, and for most of the aughts, we had a Friday and Saturday night, or Friday or Saturday night show. And the reason I went back, I'd done a lot of comedy improv in high school, but then my career went in this sort of dramatic turn. And you suddenly, you're doing dramas, and then people assume you're a drama person, and you're earning a living doing dramas. And it just sort of went down this path. And at some point, and this talks about training, this goes back to training, TV got to a place with me where they would call me up on a Wednesday, and they'd say, "Hey, can you be in New Orleans tomorrow? And you're going to start shooting right away." So we talked about that 2 months to prepare for Memphis Belle. There was no time to prepare. But because I'd studied for so long, and I'd studied for years with a great teacher in Los Angeles called Larry Moss, it was all about preparation, and you need to do all of this work and create all this backstory for your character. And I'm going, I don't have time for this. I have to be on set tomorrow, and I got to come with a fully formed character. And what improv gave me back, and by doing it, not only just the fun of being on stage, and I love improv comedy, was the idea that, like, oh no, you can give me a word, or give our group a word or a phrase, and we can put on a 45 to an hour long show that's incredibly entertaining. And it goes back to why you became an actor, or I became an actor in the first place. It's a kid's game. When Brian and Reed are playing, soldiers on the beach at Skegness, and you're like, well, you don't go, sorry, I got to know, what unit am I in? What was my training like? What did I have for breakfast? You're like, yeah, I'm the Tommy, you're the Yank, or we're going to take that bunker, right? Like it's a kid's game. You're just playing pretend. And that really helped me with the TV thing. And the other thing too was, like, every take is different. So instead of I'd never been a guy who tried to set a performance. I like to stay very improvisational anyway, but that really honed it. It was like, no, each take is another, let's just play. Let's keep playing. And that's, for me, that's what's most exciting about acting and what I do, is the unknown. I don't want to know what you're going to do. I'm always looking for the mistakes. Like, it's the second something goes a little wrong, that's when everything gets really exciting and we're very present and the scene gets good. So that really, I think fundamentally the biggest the biggest boon to my acting work was going back and doing improv. Improvisational comedy, and because it took all of the preciousness, because I'd gotten so neurotic at some point in the 90s. I would prepare for every moment in a show or a movie. I'd literally prepare like for a walk across the street, and then one day I was like, why don't you just walk across the street? Just walk across the street. But there's the Red Shirt Freshman. So shout out Red Shirt Freshman.
Excellent. I've just got an image of you being a method actor now, thinking before you're crossing the street, who am I? What am I going to?
Exactly.
Awesome. I wanted to cross over. I wanted to speak about 24 because 24 is a franchise that is loved by millions. You're my third director of CTU and my fifth guest from the show on the show. So I am a massive guest. I had Carlos Bernard on not long ago. Good old Tony Almeida. I'm yet to get Kiefer Sutherland on. I'm trying my hardest. I really am.
Good luck.
I will eventually get him. I'll just keep on going.
Okay.
But you play an awesome character in season 8 or day 8. What attracted you to the role of Jason Pillar?
Well, you see, the last 20 years of my career have been built on just saying yes to everything. Mm-hmm. So the 90s were sort of fraught after I got out of school, except for this beautiful period of doing Homicide. But the 2000s have just been spectacular, and it's all built on saying yes. So I'd gotten to a certain point in my career where you're auditioning, but lots of things are getting offered to you, and instead of going, no, I'm not going to do it, I go, yes. So sometimes it's an amazing experience, and sometimes it's not. But I found you get much more from saying yes, and 24 is an example of so many experiences I've had where they're bringing me in to do an episode or 2 episodes. That was the idea. Designated Survivor was the same way. Tons of shows I've been on. I was just coming, even Dollhouse for Joss, I was just supposed to do that one scene with Olivia in the pilot. And then suddenly by the end of that day of shooting the pilot, Olivia's like, all right, I'll see you in September. And Joss like, see you in September. I'm like, I'm just here for this. And suddenly I've got a character on the show. So 24 was one of these great things because I had auditioned at the beginning of that season to play Michael T's part. So Michael T was like sort of head of CTU at the beginning of that season. Now you would think in a show called 24 that has 24-hour episodes that they've planned out the season. But TV doesn't work that way. It's so fast. Sometimes they have a beginning, middle, and end, but sometimes they just have a great idea, and that idea peters out before they're done with the season. So I came on to work, with, he was a great part because he was sort of a smarmy little sort of apparatchik. But then suddenly they'd played out the whole CTU thing and they needed a new villain. And I just happened to be there. And so suddenly I go from just being, his apparatchik, his little toady, to like now I get to do real villainous things. So it was one of those magical mitzvahs that no one could have planned. And then I'm there. So suddenly I come for one episode and I stay for 8, and I'm the big bad guy at the end, which is get my ear bit off by Kiefer. So I had I like playing assholes. And I feel like, for the last 20 years, I've made some cash playing likable assholes. And so it was a niche that I was, because I'm not an asshole in real life. And I'm sort of like a pathetically nice and sweet guy. And so it's fun to exercise those parts of your persona or psyche that you would never do in real life, So he was a great part. And and so, and then working with Kiefer was amazing. And it was funny because I didn't work with him until the last 2 episodes, because I was just with the president the whole time, or the ex-president, as we're plotting our return. But yeah, so it was funny because, like I said, I auditioned to be the head of CTU, and then they offered me the part, and I ended up becoming the head of CTU. And that, so you never know. That's the thing, is that you never know how it's going to work out. You never know what something will become. And that's why it's an interesting, we talked about confidence earlier. The other thing is, when I talk to younger actors, or even counseling myself or my peers, I'm like, you could try to map it out. It's nice to have some goals, but it's like that, is it the John Lennon quote, like, life is what happens while you're making other plans? And right, so it's just like you need to be open. If the more open you are to what's going on, and I find it's made for an exciting life. And I've gotten to do a lot of cool shows with lots of amazing people, and just having that, which goes back, it's sort of the improv attitude, because the first rule of improv comedy is yes and, right? So you agree, and then you add something to it, and so that's the number one thing you do. And yes and is a great way to sort of go through life.
That's awesome advice, and I think a lot of people should follow it. Just say yes to everything and see what happens. But you share some great scenes with Gregory Itzin, that plays President Logan. I mean, what's he like off screen compared to on screen? Because he's so slimy on screen.
So oh my God. So he's another one. There's so many actors who are nothing like the personas they play. Like me, like, it's funny, like right now I'm in shorts and, a t-shirt. You know what? It's funny, like, I'll pick up my daughter from school, and parents will be like, you look much older on TV. I'm like, dude, that's because I'm only in a suit on TV, and you've never seen me in anything but cargo shorts and a backwards baseball cap. And Itzin, he's the same. So right before we did 24 together, he and I actually did a radio play for the BBC, which was an amazing experience. The BBC director, producer, she came over to LA, because I guess it was all American actors, and we did it in the way that, because I'm such an Anglophile, BBC centric, the England's my jam, so I'm like I say, I'm much more interested. I'd much rather work at Pinewood Studios than any US studio, or Shepperton, and did it the way they do their up in a stereo format, and so you have to move like a stage play to, like, who's on and who's off. But Greg Itzin he's a total hippie. He's a hippie. So when we were doing the radio play, he has so much jewelry and so many rings and necklaces. He had to take off because it was messing up the recording because it's too jangly. So we had to spend a considerable amount of time just removing all of his jewelry so that he could, we could do the radio play. But no, he's another one. Like, I've been so blessed to work with amazing actors. He and I had so much fun, because you just know. I mean, he's just an amazing stage actor and just a cool dude. And so we had so much fun. And because when you're playing and you've got someone who you can throw the ball to, and they're going to throw it back in a different way, you can just have so much more fun. And then I always say, if you've planned it the night before, you know what you're going to do, it's boring. But if you're just playing 1 + 1, it just equals infinity, right? You just you'll never know, because your focus is on the other person and what they're doing, and however you react in the moment to the other person, what they're doing, is so much more interesting than anything you could have come up with in your bedroom, because it's alive, it's happening, it's unplanned, which is very disconcerting. I mean, I know a lot of actors who don't like that. They don't want to, there's that famous Olivier moment where he was performing, I guess, The Entertainer on, in the West End, and his character has to break down, and he would fake it every night. And one night the emotion really kicked in, and he went backstage and he apologized to the cast. He said, "I'm sorry, that will never happen again," and but no, Greg was amazing, and we just had so much fun, even him killing me. That was a fun day. And there was so many, and there's so many good actors on that thing. We had to work with Cherry Jones, and she was a hoot.
She's fantastic, isn't she?
Yeah. Oh man. No, I was really that. Like I said, like I went there for 1 episode or 2, and then I was there, and we had the best time. And then Kiefer, Kiefer's intense, but I'd known Kiefer. Kiefer and I, we did summer stock together. I think he and I are the same age. Maybe he's a year older than me. So I'm about 16, 17. We both did we were apprentices. We were basically, hired. Well, we paid to build your sets for you all summer and maybe get some acting experience. But it was an amazing summer for a 16-year-old. And so I met him then. And then the second time I saw him was when we were making Memphis Belle at Pinewood. Because Pinewood, which in America, none of the U.S. studios have bars or really fancy restaurants. But Pinewood is this gorgeous, I remember we'd have lunch every day in this wood-paneled dining room where the wood panels had been taken from some great luxury liner. But then after a while, I would eat where the crew ate, because it was this great cafe. But you could get a pint there, right? You could get a drink at lunch, right? Yep. And then there was this beautiful wood-paneled bar. And I remember seeing Kiefer shooting like the soldier and the showgirl, something. He was shooting some movie there at the same time, and he's just drinking midday, stirring his brown liquor there at the bar. And then the next time I saw him was when he bit my ear off. But that was a cool experience too, because I think that when the day he bit my ear off, that was the last day of shooting of 24. So it was, everyone had been there for 8 years or however many years, and so it was a great experience to be part of. And then I got to. And Designated Survivor was the same thing. I think I came in there to do 1 or 2 scenes, and then we all just hit it off, and I got to be there for 20 episodes, and that was another awesome experience. But I love working with him because he's
it's really refreshing. It's really refreshing to hear, because there is an actor, which I won't name, from 24 that was in that season that obviously didn't get on well with Kiefer. Even said publicly how difficult he was to work with, and that he actually questioned his own path in acting. So it's quite nice to hear, because I've met Kiefer twice, and he's such a nice bloke. He really, really is. So it's really refreshing to hear that he's good to work with.
Well, I know who you're speaking about, and I worked with that actor as well that season. I will say, Kiefer's tough. He's super tough, right? But I've ever worked with, really talented. So he's tough. I like it because probably going back to that, what we were talking about the old days of, I grew up in only negative reinforcement. I get excited when it gets prickly on set, because it creates another energy. I mean, on Homicide, I'd be getting ready to shoot my most emotional close-up, and the executive producer, Tom Fontana, would walk by, the genius Tom Fontana, and literally right before we're about to roll, he'd be like, "Don't fuck it up," right? And I like that. There's something that gets your cortisol flowing, and I thrive in that. So Kiefer doesn't suffer fools, and he's comes really ready he's prepared, he's ready to go. And if everyone else isn't, or I have seen people who've shown up not ready to give 100%, and it hasn't gone well for them. And so his delivery system can be intense, but he and I always got along really great. But it was fun, because sometimes it's really changed, because I'm working with a lot of young actors these days now that I've gone from the youngest guy in the cast to the oldest guy in most casts. But now I'm working with young actors. I've done 13 Reasons Why and this show here, and when I did The Purge, and all the young actors I'm working with are just spectacular, right? They're all super focused and cool and really talented. So it gives me a lot of hope and excitement, about the future. But there was this period in the late 90s, early aughts, where a lot of people developed terrible habits on TV. A lot of people were being paid, just driving up, dump trucks full of money, and people were coming not prepared, like not having learned their lines. I remember my buddy, Eric Stoltz, when he first started directing, he famously sent out this sort of memorandum which stated very clearly what he expected from the cast, that they would come not only having knowing their lines, but also coming with a choice and prepared to work. And he'd forbid the dreaded mini sides from ever being on set. So mini sides, for those who don't know, like it's basically the day's work in a little mini form, and people come to rehearsal with their little mini side scripts. And I just, out of sort of probably just intimidation or macho pride, I never bring sides of script, because I always feel like if I don't know it by the time I get there, we're probably in a lot of trouble. But some people develop some very bad habits. And Kiefer was to tie this up. Kiefer was a wonderful antidote to that particular disease, because you couldn't show up not knowing your words and ready to go. So, but everyone has a different experience. That's always, you bring up a really interesting thing too. And I think this ties into that. Yes, there's people who have bad reputations out there. But I find that most of the time, it also depends on what you're bringing. I mean, I've worked with some world-class nightmares who really do ascribe to the philosophy, because I come from that ensemble theater, the improv ethos of like, we all rise together. So the better you are, the better I am. And I always think about it in a English football way. An assist is just as good as a goal. Like, whoever gets the ball to the guy in front of the net, that guy, that's the genius, right? So I rather make Brian the star of the scene, because we're all going to get there together. Like, it's better if if you're on a roll, I'm going to keep feeding you, because that's how it works. But there's another type of actor, and they've become fewer and farther between, but especially in my early days, where they did feel like the worse you are, the better I look. So they would, there was undermining, very pointed things to sort of chip away at your confidence right before a take. Wonderful tricks that I learned. There was an actor who I won't name, but on Homicide, because it was all handheld, there were no traditional shooting styles. So on a regular, if you just gave a basic template, it would be on a regular shoot, you do a master, over, single. But it was all over the place. So no one was guaranteed a single or your close-up. And there was one actor who definitely wanted a close-up. So he had two tricks that were really good. He was a genius. One was to not know his lines throughout, so you couldn't use any of it. And suddenly they finally come in for a single at the end, and lo and behold, he knew all of his words. He was word perfect. So that was the only shot they could use when they were in the single. The other one is if we were in the box, the interrogation room, the famous box from Homicide. There's a little square window, and he would just go to the window and talk out the window, which meant that they had to come around to the other side and cover it directly through the window. So there's method to that madness, but it's become fewer and farther between. I mean, now I find like, I feel like you can bring out what you brings out the best in other people, and I've been warned about. I've had marvelous experiences. I mean, it's a great life, but it is that's the other thing about it. I mean, for me, it's 1,000 first days of school. It's like 1,000 first days of kindergarten. So you got to come in, you got to meet new people, you're in a strange environment, and then you got to do your job.
And then talking about, obviously, bad reputations and everything like that. And there's a comment that Denzel Washington said about the press, that if you don't read the news, you're uninformed. If you read the news, you're misinformed. And there's a lot of press around Josh, which is true though half the time. It really, really is. And the slack that Josh Whedon's getting at the moment, and obviously you having worked with him on Dollhouse and Much Ado About Nothing, I mean, how much do you think that is true? And have you witnessed anything? Because the way I look at it is that we all have managers in jobs that we may not like or get on with, but they make sure we get our job done. So, is Josh just a man that knows what he wants and knows what works, because he is successful after all? Or have you witnessed any of the things that have been in the press?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, Josh is, I love Joss with all my heart. He's one of the most spectacular people I've ever had the good fortune to work with. I would say unequivocally, I believe he's the only genius I've ever worked with. I mean, the man is, he is so multifaceted and so expert in so many realms. Such an incredible writer, incredible director, an amazing guy. So, from my personal experience, and we'll put it this way, I think this might partially answer the question. He talked about, every job he collects people. And that he loves their talent, he loves their personality. And so when we made something like Much Ado About Nothing, that was all a bunch of people that he'd collected over the years from various shows. And it was one of the greatest shooting. It was in the top 2-3 shooting experiences of my entire life. And I never left set because you knew that everyone was talented and everyone they were spectacular human beings. So it was 2 weeks. We were shooting at his house and no one left. You just watched people shoot their scenes, and then we'd all party together that night. And I love all of those people. So I will say, in the Kiefer realm, he doesn't suffer fools, and I'll put it this way. He expects you to put in at least half as much work as he puts in. And, talking about shows where they didn't know the ending and stuff, stuff like that. Joss, when we did Dollhouse, he's like, it's going to be a 4-year show. I've got the whole thing planned out. He's working at that level. So I can't really speak to other people's, I've never witnessed it. And that was never my experience. And the people I worked with, whether it be, certainly on Dollhouse, they're all like, he loves, Olivia was amazing, and Amy Acker, and all those people are part of the group. We all kept working with them. So I don't know. I have personal theories about things that went down. And, I think if you don't want to say a character, a comic book character's cat is to a person who knows every comic inside and out, that might cause trouble, but I don't know. So, this is the thing too. You can only speak about your subjective experience, I think, in this day and age. I think that's what's really so. You can't really deny someone else's interpretation or experience of an event. But I can say unequivocally that I love that guy, and I would work with him in a heartbeat, and I never had anything but the best. But trust me, like, I came prepared every day I worked with Joss. And even like, I remember my last, because I was leaving Dollhouse the first season because I was on to something else. And he'd written stuff for me the night before to go into the last episode, because he had all these things he wanted my character to do. And he wrote me this 3-page monologue. And I got it the night before. And I fucking busted my butt to get that thing right. And even like, and there was something that I did that, and this probably goes back to like where, how thick your skin is and how you came up in the business. I did something that was silly or wrong, and he just, he mocked me to my face on set. But I was like, I didn't take it as anything but the way, your best mate would, rib you, where you make, you're like, yeah, I'm like, yeah. That was a bad choice. All right. He's like, I tried to get away with it. So he always made me a better actor. And so that's I can only subjectively, and from the people I know who are all still best friends with him, nothing but love.
And it's refreshing to hear. Everyone I've interviewed that's worked with him has said nothing but positive things, and it just does make you think: are they using him as a scapegoat for things not working out? But I'm glad that you had positive experiences with him. Time is running short, my friend.
Oh my gosh, Brian!
God, we kept... I know. I could talk to you for hours. What's next for you? What can you say? What you're working on, or you're not allowed?
So I think I can't. So I've got 2 things coming out right now. I've got the final season of Bosch on Amazon, and the reboot of Leverage, which I think is called now Leverage Redemption.
So, yeah.
And both Yeah. So that's really exciting because both of those I get to play just delightful assholes. But now I'm here in Portland working on a show that I'm super psyched about called Girl in the Woods. So it's a horror, young adult, beautiful scripts, an amazing cast of exceptionally talented younger actors. So this is what I'm, I've gone hippie and I'm hoping this,
Awesome.
I'm using this for this thing. Yeah. So that'll be on Peacock. It's with Crypt TV on Peacock, and I'm not sure when that comes out, but we're shooting it right now. So I'm super psyched about that. But yeah,
That's awesome.
But no, Brian, what a joy, man. I thank you so much for inviting me on.
It's okay. I just wanted to mention as well, Cameo, because are you still on Cameo? Can people still...
I still am on. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Cameo. You know what? Also, I'm just going to say right now, I guarantee you I give you the best cameos for their buck. I do mostly all singing ones. They rarely are less than 6 to 7 minutes long, and I take them very seriously. But I feel like it's odious to sort of... I don't promote them on my social media because I just enjoy doing them. But I feel like if you've spent $75 of your hard-earned money, I'm going to give you everything I got.
That is good to hear, because there's some actors and actresses on there that are demanding, $500, $600, and I just think that is crazy. Have you got any conventions planned coming up in the next year? Do you know of?
No, I mean the Star Fury conventions in the UK are the ones that I normally do, because those are Sean Harry who runs those. Those are my favorites, and it's the perfect thing. So you get to spend a weekend with amazing fans. The last one was in Blackpool, and then but also I get to be in England, and then I always extend my stay because I try to get to England at least every 2 years because I just love it there so much. And I'm in all of the UK. And so I'm hoping to do that. I did a sort of virtual thing with him in the summer, but now with COVID and vaccines, I'm hoping in the next year to start that up. And now I've got, now I'm doing another horror piece, another genre show. So hopefully I can do some more of that, because I love conventions, because I love chatting with people who are. Sorry, I'm falling apart here. I love chatting with people who are passionate about the shows, and it's always a good time.
Yeah, you know what? I can't wait for conventions to come back, because I think that people have missed it, and especially with mental health during the pandemic, and these are events that people look forward to year in, year out. So, when they come back, I think they're going to be absolutely enormous, and I cannot wait. But Reed, you've been a great guest. I've really enjoyed chatting with you. You're completely
Brian.
Opposite to your characters.
No, it's been a pleasure, man.